Okay, Phil, great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
I've bigged you up a little bit before already on the show, but why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about how you found yourself in green politics?
Okay, well, for me, it started very young, I suppose, in my teens, partly through my mother was a member of the Conservation Society, which was set up, I think, in the late 60s. And I was aware of things like, you know, acid rain, deforestation to some degree, and the natural environment suffering. I grew up in the 50s when, things weren't too bad, but there were environmental problems beginning to make themselves known. And I guess that sort of set the seed, along with an education that was predominantly science. And I was always a biologist and very interested in that side of things, especially marine science. And again, we were looking in those days at the huge impact of whaling and so forth. So Friends of the Earth started, and I went off to university and studied oceanography. And again, I was being confronted with, overfishing. And all those things turned me into somebody who thought, we're not treating the planet very well. We've got to do things better. And there are so many better ways that seemed obvious to me that we could do things better. So that's really where it started. And I've been in and out of it ever since. I've had periods of my life where I've not been working particularly directly in that area, but it's always been the place I felt I'd come back to. And 20 years ago, I closed down a big commercial business I was running and came back to energy and the environment and buildings. And about 6, 7 years ago, having never joined a political party, though been politically active, I thought the Greens, they were the only party I felt were looking at the broad picture and working for everybody, really, just not just working for one group, one section of society, but everybody. Because if you're working for the planet, for the environment, you are working for all.
And how did you find your experience in green politics? Because obviously the Green Party is a fringe party, and Caroline Lucas has been in Parliament now for a number of years and is a fantastic speaker. I think she's always so eloquent. But, people are often quite critical of the kind of loony green fringe party. I wondered how your experiences were.
Yeah, well, you can call it a fringe party. I think actually, if you look at the actual support outside general elections, it's not insignificant. And, we're polling around 5%. I nearly didn't lose my deposit in the last election at 4.7 something percent. I got used to that. When in the 80s, I was working at CAT in Mahuntleth and driving around in a little tiny Mini with a nuclear power no thanks sticker on the back. And believe me, I got plenty of ridicule for that. I don't have a problem with ridicule if people are taking the Michael out of the simple scientific truths. If the facts are there, the facts speak for themselves, then if you think I'm mad to follow them, then fine. I believe in evolution, not revolution, a bit unlike some of our American cousins who seem to have a different view at the moment. But green politics is maturing. It is always going to be criticized, as all politics will be. But I looked at it, and while I will have disagreements with some of my Green colleagues, inevitably, all in all, I think it's a pretty good message. And you mentioned Caroline Lucas. Again and again, she comes out as one of the most impressive politicians and actually gets voted as one of the most, shall we say, respected MPs, because she talks sense and she has morals.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, I voted Green in European elections since the late 80s.
Yeah.
And I was very heartened because I remember in 1989, there was a European election and the Greens did fantastically well that year. And that really spurred me on. Of course, for some reason, they waned over the years. But I think, it's one of my central messages really is that nature rules us more than anything else, not economics and not politics and not even religion. And if you don't let green decisions influence your life, you're going to end up disconnected, and we have become so disconnected. Anyway, we might take a break there before I'm going to come back and ask you a little bit about your your business you had, you're in the building trade, you were into passive housing. So after this track, you can tell me all about that.